Yo, what's going on, people? It's Spencer here, and we're back for another DTC Draft League video. This time I'll be going over the highlights of Week 2, so I think it's pretty safe to say it was a very hacks-filled week, but also one that features some surprise comebacks and all-around excellent play. So just like last time, I'll lay out the format. We'll go over the scoreboard and the kill leaders, we'll discuss the best overall prep and play, discuss some areas of improvement for some teams, and then go into our feature battle. So let's go ahead and get started with the scoreboard. In the Moon Division, the Tennessee Tyrannotars take a 3-0 win against the Sao Paulo Dragonites, while the DC Duraldons bounce back with a 3-0 win against the Destin Lucarios. The Dutch Drampas take a narrow 1-0 defeat against the Los Angeles Spark Surfers, as the Philadelphia Fanpees go 2-0 against the Den Haag Darumaka. Then in the Sun Division, the San Francisco 49tails cruise to a 4-0 win against the NorCal Electivires, while the Memphis Grimmsnarls take a 4-0 victory against the Ottawa Garchomps. And rounding out the A-League, the Dallas Star Raptors return with a 4-0 win against the Pittsburgh Poltergeists as the Big Fat Groudons surge to a 6-0 victory against the London Lux Rays. So that's the scoreboard. Then let's go ahead and get into the kill leaders. I'll go through the overall kill leader standings and then the week's best performers, and then just briefly explain how they got there. So the overall kill leaders are Mega Salamence and Mega Metagross, each with 6-1 KDs. Then you have Type Null, Lando T, and Marshadow all tied with 4-0 records. Going into the specific kill leaders for this week, we'll just go ahead and briefly go over Malik Pai's team. And the star performer here is the Gastrodon. So kind of in a repeat of last week's fortunes, Ace Trainer had the webs bounce back on them this time, but this time finds a chance to line his own while gradually wearing down Gastrodon's Sableye. Eventually, Rakuni gets the KO against the Mega Sableye, so it gives an opening for Slaking to land a Play Rough on Gastrodon. But the Truant basically gives a chance for Malik Pai to abuse it, kind of pivots between the Jirachi and the Gastrodon, gets some toxic damage on there, so the combination of that plus Life Orb Recoil really wears down that Slaking. And then later the Obstagoon is able to activate its Guts and get off a Facade, but the Gastrodon does live and then retaliate with a counter. So you see that really Ace Trainer's team is very stacked with physical mons, so Malik Pai really abused that, kind of had a lot of good defensive pivots and defensive cores. He even brought a Haxorus with heavy-duty boots to respond to the Zekrom. So, well played on Malik Pai's part. Very good play there. Looking at the next match, though, we do have QJRT versus Cool Kicker. So looking at this match, really the star performer here was Marc's Mega Gengar. So in the early plays, we have a lot of basically glare and bulky rocks being set up by the Sandaconda and the Druddigon. One of the advantages that Marc has really early on is the fact that he has a Cleric in the form of Clefable. It's actually an unaware Clefable, I believe. So the fact that Marc is kind of able to shrug off the toxic and other status effects from Cool Kicker's team really helps, where Cool Kicker is struggling to kind of get around that with the eventual glare that I think comes onto the Superior. So really just able to take advantage of the momentum in the mid game, and then quite on later, actually able to kind of save his Mega Gengar in the back for those sweepers, get the glare on the Mega Beedrill, and then eventually get those KOs for the 3-0 for Mega Gengar. So very good on Marc's part. And then the next match I believe we have is, Sam versus Potion Seller. So here's more of a showcase of Hoopa-Unbound. So really the key focal point on Potion Seller's team was the Torterra, the fact that it was the ground type, so you really had to kind of pivot around that for the Magearna to try to get some potential to sweep up. Eventually, I think we do get that opportunity when, coming in, he does actually predict with a good Ice Beam and lands it there. Really gives some opportunities for not only the Magearna to come in, but later on you'll see the Hoopa-Unbound to come in. Unfortunately, does not get Potion Seller doesn't get the Sucker Punch off, which was pretty significant in Sam's favor. But it does enable some KOs later on, just given how strong Hoopa-Unbound is with those naturally high offenses, 170, 160 attack and special attack. So really just enabling a win by using frequent pivoting, holding off from the Ice Beam reveal, and then strategically using it to remove both a ground check and otherwise a significant obstacle sweep. And of course, Hoopa's special bulk can't really be discounted here either. The fact that it was just able to pivot in so many times and get strong hits is a big factor in Sam's favor. So well played on his part. And then the number 2 and number 1 slot, I'll be discussing both in the same match. It's going to be both Thomas and his rain team versus Mike's kind of mid-range, like half sun balanced team. We're not quite sun, but more of a balanced team. But kind of just discussing this match very briefly. On Thomas's side, the really star performer was the Zapdos. The Zapdos put on a lot of pressure on what I believe was a spec set. Hard to actually tell. It was doing quite a lot of damage regardless, but Thomas did have a lot of pressure, respectively. He obviously had not only the Zapdos, but the Specs Kingdra, Mega Swampert. He had good Cleric support in the form of Licky Licky, and then some rock setting as well, and obviously repeated Ring with the Pelipper. But the advantage for Mike was just the fact that he brought a Sunsetter, rather, to kind of counteract that rain, first of all. He had a bulky water, especially defensive one in the form of Suicune, and then a kind of wide choice to actually run a Mega Metagross that ran Toxic, as well as a few other mons that were running Toxic, to really pressure Licky Licky in particular, which I kind of had to choose between going for either Wish to recover, which actually does reveal it's a Z heal set, which is kind of interesting, or to go for a Heal Bell to recover the rest of the team, given that there's a lot of burn and Toxic kind of being spread around. So it made the initiative really go in Mike's favor a lot of the time, although admittedly there also was a significant amount of hacks in this game as well. You have a few Hydro Pump misses from the Kingdra, I believe, a few Zen Headbutt misses from Mega Metagross, as well as a few flinches. So all of those things obviously enable the kind of final outcome. But again, Zapdos really a star performer here, just able to hit really heavy with those Thunders and Weather Balls boosted under the rain. And as well as Mega Metagross, obviously just having a massive attack stat, very spammable Zen Headbutt, really enables those plays. So those are the top 5 kill leaders for this week. Just in review, Gastrodon 3-0 with Malik Pie, Mega Gengar from Marc with 3-0 as well. Sam's Hoopa-Unbound takes 4 kills this week, and then Thomas's Zapdos takes 4 kills, while Mega Metagross takes 5 kills this week. So all great performers, obviously. Very well done on everyone's part here. So we'll go into the best play and prep of the week, and absolutely no show of bias. I'll give it to myself in my match versus Raven. Really, the things that I think enable my win were the input to run Toxic on a choice of Strika set, run Spadef Como, and the Choice Scarf Cryogonal. Really all were huge factors in enabling that win. Obviously, the Spadef Como, despite taking a huge Brave Bird to the face early on, ended up being kind of crucial in scouting the Greninja set and taking some of those hits. The Scarf Cryogonal kind of just served great offensive pressure, actually threatened to live his team with that Freeze Dry. Obviously, a crit and a froze really didn't play a huge factor there, although it was unfortunate hacks, obviously. And then obviously running the Toxic on the Zebstrika really put a lot of pressure on Lantern, get that rock damage, get that Toxic damage racked up, really enables the KO for Arceus later on. So all those factors, huge things that I just kind of knew Raven would bring to the table, and decided to prep for them. So pretty fun match, but also very well played. He definitely had his show of surprises. Agility, double dance, special Mega Lucario was very surprising and really cool and innovative. So in the next section, I'll actually touch upon what I'll call the room for improvement section. So in here, we're just going to basically talk about what I think are some teams that could either use some retooling or essentially kind of find new ways to diversify themselves. So the first team I'll go over here is actually Thomas's Dutch Drompus team. So the key things that I'm looking at are just the fact that even though this team is very heavily centered around rain, we're looking for opportunities to kind of diversify that play. So, like, for example, one of the things that Mike took advantage of was the strong reliance on Licky Licky as the Cleric. So kind of confined to that role, it had a hard time responding to the bevy of Pokemon on Mike's team that were running Toxic, and often, again, had to choose between healing itself or its allies. So having more diversity in that roster, just beyond the typical rain formula, either having more defensive pivots or having other Cleric options that don't, succumb to that pressure as well, is something that I would consider. And maybe just having some offensive options that don't necessarily have to benefit under the rain might benefit as well. So that's just one suggestion. And then going into the next team here, we have, there we go, Pittsburgh Poltegeist. So that would be Potion Seller's team. Obviously, a lot of really interesting threats on here. You got the Mega Kangaskhan, Gengar, Bisharp Tapu Bulu. You got some good defensive stuff in there too, like Toxapex. One thing, though, that Sam did identify in his match was really the potential threat to an offensive Magearna sweep, and he ran that Bolt Beam coverage to kind of ensure that it was out of the game early, the Torterra. So despite having respectable and offensive and defensive options, I'd really recommend more emphasis being placed on ensuring each team member is fulfilling a very specific role, covering the weaknesses of one another, making sure that you have the best ground type that you can get within your means, the best rock type or best rock setter rather, things like that in that general sense. So you have like a general sense of how your team functions, but then looking ahead to the rest of the week, how does it perform in those particular matchups, and are all of my team members kind of suiting me for that matchup is something important to consider. So just some potential room for improvement there. And then the last one I'm actually going to look at is Ace Trainer's team and the NorCal Activiers. We saw really in the last 2 weeks that sticky webs was actually used as a detriment in most of these matchups. So both of his opponents prepped for sticky webs, which was really kind of to Ace Trainer's detriment. So one thing obviously I'd recommend is not having an over-reliance on sticky webs to really enable your sweeps. So either running other, complementary offensive suites, so things like maybe Aurora Veil, dual screens, having some kind of memento mon to set up or enable to set up is going to be important in those respects. Maybe just kind of still having Oracle as an option, but not relying it as your only option to be kind of the setup for the rest of your team. And then especially in the Malik Pie match, I would say just kind of having less reliance on physical sweepers, and particularly ones that are very burn weak. If you're going to do that, obviously you need really a strong cleric, and right now it's not coming to me if Cresselia can get Heal Bell Aromatherapy, but just overall putting a cleric on your roster would be very beneficial. And then obviously just more or less, having a huge litany of sweepers is fine, but diversifying those sweepers, making sure that they have coverage that doesn't overlap too much, and obviously running special sweepers are all really good ways to kind of break through that monotony and not have to worry about being predicted too easily. So that's just the room for improvement section. Those are just a few teams that I was looking at and ways to improve for the coming weeks. But then finally we'll go into our feature battle actually, which is going to be Ice Trainer's battle. Now Ice Trainer of course had a pretty rough week last week. He was kind of read by Pesky's I believe Mega Houndu with Hidden Power Ice, which was admittedly a very good read. But here we can kind of see a return to form. He's kind of bringing these comfort picks that he is known for in his Ubers and Anything Goes play. So clearly the Mega Zygarde, the Gothorito with the Shadow Tag is going to be, or Mega Zygarde, excuse me, Zygarde Complete and Gothorito with Shadow Tag are both two things that work very well together. So here you see the function really in action. So Gothorito is meant to trap and remove gradually things like the Skarmory, just defensive answers or even offensive answers that just can't break Gothorito. So that's pretty much the significance there. I won't go through the entire match obviously in all these turns, but just a couple things that I'll say for the purposes of this match. So things that obviously enabled the win were one, bringing the picks that he knew and he could play very well. So not just the Zygarde Complete and the Gothorita, but things like Torn T, Articuno, Ferrothorn as well, just being a nice defensive glue option, are all really well. They're going to set up hazards, they're going to pressure, they're forcing repeated switches. Things like that obviously enabled the win. Dragon Tail on Zygarde Complete also really helped for the phasing opportunities as well. Although I will say as well, just to give credit, Saber did have a lot of really excellent pivoting opportunities. Many opportunities where they essentially kind of tried to fake out or lure the Zygarde and then got in another answer, such as Giratina, or if they were trying to lure in the Gothorita, they brought in Salazzle with the taunt. So I thought that was really well played. And they had a lot of pivoting on their team as well. So ways to kind of try to get around the Gothorita, but only worked for so long, obviously, and didn't work in the end. But regardless, the game was really just a matter of putting on that repeated pressure, having a strong defensive synergy, and then not being bound to pure stall. So I wouldn't quite call this a straight stall team, but more of a semi-stall component, just given that you're looking at the speed tiers on Ice's team, and you have things like Tornadus T and obviously Shame in the Sky, so a little bit faster to try to respond to the offensive pressure if you have maybe mid-speed setup sweepers on the opposing team. So just a really well balanced team composition, obviously really well played by him, and yeah, just excellent come around. Really came back with a 6-0 from last week. So well done, very well done. That's really going to be it from me though. So folks, that'll be the highlights of week 2. If you like this content and you want to see more, be sure to like and subscribe. Of course, let me know if you enjoy this format and if you want to see more segments added or dropped. But just overall, continue to support the DTC Draft League. And until then, I'll see y'all next time.